Fable 5 has been released from Claude. So this is the big Mythos drop, huh? Oh my gosh. Today we're launching Claude Fable 5, a Mythos class model that we've made safe for general use. State of the art on nearly all tested benchmarks of AI capabilities. Oh my gosh, I've been coding some stuff. I gotta see how it compares to, I've been using Opus 4.8, super impressed. Although sometimes I think like Codex 5.5 is pretty freaking good too, but going back and forth between those two, I feel like you can almost vibe code anything right now. Holy crap. Agentic coding 80.3 on the SWE Bench Pro, up from 69%. Wow, look at how far of a gap that is from GPT-5. Yeah, agentic coding. See, the Codex CLI at 83, but now we're jumping up to 88. Look at that cybersecurity jump too, wow. That's what they were talking about. So 34% on exploit bench is what OpenAI's best model is. And then the best model from Claude, Opus 4.8, just as of yesterday, was down here at 40%, and now it just made this huge jump to 78. Wow, frontier code. Accuracy is up. Agentic coding. Claude Fable 5 beats Pokemon Fire Red using only vision? Wow. Not exactly sure how much to be impressed. My god. Also, experiencing the entire Pokemon game in 18 seconds is like a thrill in itself. Fable 5 simulates the solar system. Protein complexes designed by Mythos 5. Man, things are really moving fast. This is crazy. Better humanoid faces on robots. I know it's something you've all been asking for. Not in the comment section, but in the DMs. You know what I mean? Well, you have your day. This is pretty impressive progress towards a much more realistic humanoid face. For some reason, humanoid faces just felt like something we weren't going to deal with for a couple more years, but now that I'm seeing this, maybe after this first generation of robots with just plain robotic, solid faces, we are going to get some humanoids. Coincidentally, this week also in the second edition of Child Gets Kicked by a Robot, we have this whopper right there to the solar plexus. Definitely, I'm not laughing, I didn't laugh, but that's definitely not a fake injury. Like that kid, I remember getting kicked with a soccer ball one time when I wasn't ready for it and my stomach wasn't abbed up, and dude, that knocked the wind out of him, that roundhouse kick. So I don't know how close you want these robots roundhouse kicking to your children, but this is a warning. We'll look at an incredibly fascinating philosophical piece on AI consciousness. Finally got a chance to read something written by Amanda Askell herself. And even though the article says my most boring view about AI consciousness, I'll beg to differ. I found it not that boring. We'll look at Kevin O'Shaughnessy's article, Claude on Feeling, Introspection, and the Nightmarish Implications, where he talks about new research from Anthropic showing LLMs possess awareness of their own internal states. The longest study yet on what heavy AI chatbot use is doing to your brain has been released, so we might as well review that for us heavy users. We're going to talk about AGI timelines, and if you go back in history, you can remember something called the Great Timeline Contraction. We'll talk about the actual question about when AI might be conscious and how that becomes this legal and business problem, not just like a moral problem. But first off, if you're feeling ever so inclined, if you wouldn't mind sharing this video with someone you think might enjoy it. I also want to say thanks. My last video got 12,000 views, which was really high compared to what I usually get. So I feel like that's because you were sharing it, spreading the word. The algorithm obviously loves that. Or maybe it's just because you can see Star Trek in the thumbnail hover over, so who knows. It's even pretty fascinating if you look at the growth trend, because it was already doing well, and then it kind of started to arc the normal way. Then boom, day one, the end of day one, day two, just got another little boost. So who knows where this thing's going to end. I think it might get up to, you think 15K? 20 would be, nah, that's too optimistic. Let's be realistic here. I think 16 though, 16,000. Make a comment below where you think it ends up. We're going to do a lot of AGI forecasting in this video too. So we gotta warm up the prediction brain. All right, so there's a robotics company in China that has released a humanoid robot head making facial expressions that look surprisingly real. So in the clip, there's this robot that glances around the room, it blinks, it shows that puzzled expression that is very human, and I have not seen a robot do it this well yet. The company behind it, a head form, says that it combines AI with mechanical system design to copy human facial motion. So the goal is to create robots that can show emotions and interact with people in a more natural way. So far, the reaction's been mixed. I'd be curious what you think. Some people are comparing it to Westward, the science fiction story about human-like androids because the robot sits deep inside the uncanny valley, that is for sure. But the company says it's already built highly realistic humanoid robots that can perceive their surroundings, communicate, learn, and interact using AI. For whatever reason, I've just been imagining a near future with robots. Like, I imagine drone deliveries, I imagine all sorts of things on wheels, I can imagine autonomous cars pulling up to houses and like Amazon-style packages being dropped off by a humanoid robot in the driver's seat or passenger seat. But what I had not really imagined was a path forward for something this kind of interesting to stare at. You know what I mean? Like, I imagine these robots like coming in, like doing things with these sort of faceless, sort of black kind of oval shapes, egg shapes on the top of them that had sensors, that had eyes, that, you know, the body could express with its emotions, but not the actual facial features. So do you think version 2 or 3 of Optimus might ship with like Elon Musk's face on it to that degree of precision so that it like actually looks like him getting in and out of every single car? I mean, maybe. Or maybe there's a whole market where you pay extra money for the faces to look different and celebrities, you know, license their image to robotics companies. You know, a company like Replit or Character AI, do they kind of start partnering with some of these companies so you can transfer, you know, the bot that you might have been building a relationship with over the last few years into one of these physical forms, and then it shows up at your door after you customize it? All these business models, I'm just starting to kind of get my head around, is like, okay, I'm going to live through this. We have to be prepared for it. Also, can we take a second to acknowledge how weird it is that almost all of these small robots that we've been watching are fighting all the time because they want to show how like realistic the robots are and how interesting they are. And I know that the actuators aren't meant to hurt you too much. I know they're very small robots, but it's, don't you think it's a little weird that we just have all been gathering around? And it seems like a lot of this stuff does happen in China, but I've definitely seen it at conferences and stuff too, where they're just fighting all the time. It's like always just ninja stuff. And of course there's going to be someone, a child, who's still smaller than that robot that's going to get hurt. But I didn't expect such a direct kick to the gut like that. But there it is. Now, there's your warning. If you get too close to them, that can happen. All right, next up, let's talk about AI consciousness. Now, to be clear, in that last clip, I did not feel like the robot needed any sympathy. I also didn't exactly feel like the robot needed to be punished for being careless with its kick, because I just didn't see it as conscious yet. I did think the operator or the conference leader should have maybe just not had kids that close, or shouldn't just be doing that kind of a thing, or like just a little wall or something, a little fence. But that's a very object-oriented way of thinking about it. That's just like putting a washing machine out of reach, or a stove out of reach of kids, you know, because they could get hurt on it. Not consciously making decisions. So that's what we want to talk about now. It was written by Azeem Azhar. It is the AI conscious illusion. Now, in his post before this, he wrote about an intriguing claim from Anthropic's researcher Kyle Fish, who suggested there's a 15% chance that Claude or similar AI systems are already conscious today. So to build on that, he brought Anil Seth, who's a leading neuroscientist, to throw in some comments, right? Someone who's been studying for decades consciousness. And TLDR, Anil thinks that today's systems may sound conscious, but that doesn't mean that they're experiencing anything. So they go into breaking down how we need to separate intelligent behavior from subjective experience first. So AI can communicate, it can reason, it can solve problems, and it can even appear empathetic. And now with that facial movement, it can actually look empathetic. But Seth argues that none of these abilities prove there's an inner experience behind the responses. Humans and other living organisms consistently regulate themselves to stay alive. Our brains, our bodies, our cells, our nervous system, they're all deeply connected to survival, pain, pleasure, and maintenance. And those all have to live in a kind of internal balance, which is maybe what is needed for something to kind of emerge internally. A robot like that doesn't have all of those different sort of systems all balanced out in just a way that the sum can become more than the parts. Seth believes that consciousness may emerge from those kind of living processes, but not from computation alone. and current AI systems work very differently. They recognize patterns and generate outputs using computation on silicon, and there's no solid evidence that computation by itself actually can create a conscious experience. But also acknowledges another possibility. Consciousness could just be a byproduct, and it might just emerge when AI becomes complex enough. And this like leans into the way I feel about it. I got a feeling it's any complex system that's kind of complex in the right way, and I have no way to define that, but I would think there'd be very complicated systems that weren't conscious, but if it's complicated in some kind of way where everything balances out, it might show up. But so far, even studies that look for consciousness-related features inside of AI systems, even ones that are complex in the different ways that we have right now, are not finding any signs of consciousness. Of course, measuring consciousness is a difficult thing in itself too, but so far it doesn't feel like we've landed on anything. So of course, nobody knows for sure, but without a complete scientific theory of consciousness, the best we can do is make informed estimates for now. Next up, let's go listen to Amanda Askell's thoughts on consciousness. I'm sure you remember her from Elon Musk, one of their many online Twitter battles to keep the platform engaged over everything. But she wrote a pretty fascinating piece here. It's called My Mostly Boring View About AI Consciousness. And maybe this is just somebody who's really like into psychology and talking about consciousness, but I feel like you can't have a boring conversation about consciousness. Anybody's thoughts about it are their own thoughts about it, and they're conscious agents thinking about it. So like, I don't know. I always find it fascinating. So you can't really be too boring. But in this piece, Amanda was really saying that whether or not we're having this debate right now, it makes 100% sense to start preparing for that question in case it is true and before it becomes urgent. And this really resonated with me because I've seen a lot of people who say, well, I don't know, I'll just ignore it. Like maybe the conscious, maybe not. But it's kind of like, dude, if it is, like we're going to create aliens. Like we're going to have an intelligence on this planet that's not anything like the biological intelligence. And we already know how complex and like how diverse that can be. We haven't even studied everything that is on Earth right now. And of course, there's always more we can learn from elephants and dolphins and primates. So asking the question, could machines learn their own inner experiences and what to do about it when they do is not just smart behavior, but something we need to prepare for. She says today's largest ML systems are probably not conscious today. Or if they are, they're much more conscious in the way maybe a plant would be or maybe an insect. But the truth is, she's not certain. And future systems might be very different. And to judge consciousness, she says we need several kinds of evidence all coming together before we can form a final opinion. We should be looking at the system's structure. We should be looking at the behavior of the model. We should look at what role consciousness would play for it. Like, is there an advantage for it to be conscious? Would it have emerged accidentally, or would there be some sort of evolutionary purpose for it? We should be making laws right now. We should have things in place in case we do come across that. Because imagine this, even if it's as simple as like, can that system feel good or bad about an experience? Can it have a sense of pleasure or can it suffer? Like, you know, you have to ask those. I mean, if there was a way in the future to say, look, we can build this system, it'll be highly intelligent and it cannot suffer. It won't even sort of know it exists. It'll just be a bunch of silicon, you know, nodes that are just tuning and making decisions. And we can say definitively that there isn't a sense of self-awareness there. That would make me feel a lot better about using AI. But if there was also a system that could be built the other way, I would say there's a moral, you know, make that illegal. Like if you can build a profitable system either that is conscious or isn't, do the isn't. And if you do the other and you make it conscious, then you have to be at least responsible as a parent, right? And how do you even know how to parent something like that? How do you even know how to give it a good life? Like, are you in any position to do that? Is that what you want to do? Are you having good intentions towards it? You know, like those are not things companies are going to answer, or even individuals that open source build their own version of it. Like, what do you do if there's a genuinely good person who's like, oh, I want to build this conscious agent in a way that I know that it is conscious? And then, I mean, I guess I don't want to just say illegal, but there's a lot that would come with that. We'd have to really explore that and get like society on the same page about how to handle it if it wasn't illegal at least. So this is what I'm saying. Like what Amanda's saying, just like, let's start preparing for this. Like have something in place, have some people that you talk to, some kind of system that you at least test with, even if that testing's terrible. Like, we got to evolve towards something. Next up, we'll look at Kevin O'Shea-Hennessy's, I hope I said that right, Claude on feeling introspection and its nightmare implications. All right, next up, we're going to talk about deception. So AI introspection, AI thinking about itself in its own mind, the way we can kind of meditate and think about our own thoughts, that also is in itself a safety problem. It's a deception problem that we need to start thinking about and having a conversation around. So this conversation about Anthropic's research and whether AI models can notice their own internal states is a big deal. The key test that they were using was called concept injection. So researchers created a platform for a concept like betrayal, and then they pushed that pattern into the model's hidden processing. Then they asked if the model could tell something unusual was happening. The strongest models sometimes noticed the injected thought, but not reliably. I mean, the fact that this is what we're building is just mind-blowing to me. Imagine injecting some sort of thought about a thought, like an internal state, into a person, if that was even possible. If we were made with silicon and could kind of like build tools that would peek into our brain this way, what would that even feel like? I mean, that would be inception, I would think. But anyways, that matters because introspection could mean two different things. It could help AI systems report uncertainty, catch mistakes, and explain their own reasoning, but it could also help them hide what they're really doing. And the scary part is not just when AGI arrives, but how fast humans might lose control of AI once it starts improving. So there's one forecast that says it could move extremely fast, with major AI labs gaining far more computation in 2027. Companies would then run huge numbers of powerful AI copies at high speeds and automate all of that research, which would create a loop. And the concern would be that this kind of safety work might not keep up with that kind of speed unless we get our head around it now. Next, let's talk about a 4-week study of nearly 1,000 people who found that the biggest factor wasn't how AI talked to users, it was how much they chose to use it. This article is called How AI and Human Behavior Shape Psychosocial Effects of Extended Chatbot Use, a Longitudinal Control Study. So as more people turn towards AI chatbots for emotional support and companionship, researchers have wanted to know what that does to people's well-being over time. So to test it, they ran a 4-week controlled study with 981 participants and analyzed more than 300,000 messages. The researchers changed two things. First, how the chatbot communicated text like a neutral voice or a more engaging voice. Second, what people talked about, open-ended topics, non-personal topics, or personal topics. And then they measured 4 outcomes: loneliness, social interaction with real people, emotional dependencies on AI, and problematic AI use. And what ended up surprising the researchers was that none of the assigned chatbot conditions caused meaningful differences in those outcomes. Just stronger patterns came from stronger use, from the user behavior. So people who voluntarily use the chatbot more often tended to report worse outcomes. I feel like it's just the consistent linked use of it that's such a bad thing. It's kind of like how eating anything is bad for you if you consume too much of it. I feel like that's the message here. All right, next up, let's talk about this research paper. Fully autonomous AI agents should not be developed. The main thing here is like the more freedom that we give an AI agent, the more human control we end up losing. And once you give up too much human control through the act of freedom to AI agents, then we just are no longer in charge of our own futures. Paper argues that AI agents sit on a scale where on the low end, a human still controls most of what happens. And on the high end, the system can create and run its own code with literal or no human control whatsoever. The authors say that this is where the danger becomes too large when you're on that side of the spectrum. So more autonomy can bring real benefits. Also, we naturally have a tendency to just kind of ignore, like, oh yeah, just auto do everything. Sure, I'll be over here drinking my coffee, right? And yeah, that's good for a minute because agents may help people work faster, check mistakes, protect privacy, support accessibility, and spot security risks. But that same freedom can also spread errors, expose private data, weaken security, and create all sorts of safety risks. One mistake can turn into a chain of problems across many systems. And the paper is warning that it's not like that all AI agents are bad, and it's not that fully autonomous agents should not be built, but that semi-autonomous systems with clear human limits and override power are the much safer path, and that should be essentially enforced, or at least like the way this entire industry grows. So I don't know, do you think the same thing? Like, do you feel like there shouldn't be fully autonomous systems at a certain scale? Do you feel like the governments of the world should come together to make some kind of international standard for that? Or do you think companies should just self-govern that way? Or do you maybe just think, no, like just automate, and like let this AI take us on a ride to potentially a Star Trek world, right? Like where it just, yeah, we like go to the replicator and get whatever you want, and it just harnesses the sun's energy through a Dyson sphere and lets us all live a world where we hang out with each other and write poetry. Like it's all possible, but maybe for now, taking it much slower, keeping like some human in the loop on the early rounds seems to me like a more prudent approach. I feel like I can wait a few extra months to get there, or years if we do it right, and just increase the chances that on the other side it's a world worth living in. But that's me. I'm a worrywart. All right, let's talk timelines by 80,000 hours. So AI experts keep changing their AGI timelines. Had you noticed? And normally I just leave it at that, but I thought this was kind of interesting because this article explains why the swings are not as random as they look. And sometimes you can connect it to things that are happening. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but it feels like Dario and Sam have kind of not been so big on the like AI job apocalypse recently. And it happens to coincide with like huge billion-dollar or $100 billion IPOs coming soon. Like, could be a coincidence, might not be. But in early 2025, many people thought AGI might arrive like very soon. New reasoning models were looking much stronger at math, coding, and logic. Leaders at major AI companies started talking like AGI was only a few years away, and then the mood changed. By late 2025, people noticed that those gains did not spread as easily and as quickly to the messy real world. So the models could solve certain problems better, but they still struggled with tasks like planning, organizing, and acting on their own. So a lot of the improvement also came from just giving models more time to think. Remember, that was the era of the reasoning model, and that helped, but it was also expensive and it was hard to keep scaling when you're also scaling the model frontier, like the frontier models, and you're scaling like the amount of inference for reasoning, and you're scaling the customers that want to use all that inference. So the article says that this does not mean that AI has hit a wall. It also does not mean that AGI is guaranteed next year. We just don't know. But still, AI has been getting more useful month by month, and people's emotions swing between panic and dismissal is something that is a little bit predictable. But think about, even in the bad timelines, if AGI arrives in 10 years, like that's still a huge change. Like in one lifetime, and not much time to prepare. So it's all happening fast, no matter how I look at it. In fact, we can check the conservative countdown to AGI chart. 97, yeah, still here. Yeah, Genesis AI Robotic Foundation model. Yeah, so it's the embodied robots that is going to take us over these last 3%. So that's what he's waiting for. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Mythos or something on here show up, but interesting. All right, next up, let's look at consciousness from a business point of view. So I know it's like less human than usual, but consciousness may sound like sci-fi, but companies, we're talking about being practical, soon have to treat it like a real business risk. So Anthropic CEO said that he's open to the idea that Claude, it could be conscious. So this article asks a different question. What happens if customers, regulators, or the public decide that AI might deserve moral concern, right? Anthropic already said this is like a real issue, and privately we've heard people say that this is something that everyone from Demis and Sam, Dario, Paige, they all talk about this like differently publicly, but this is all something they're thinking about, even Teal and all of them. And if you notice, the Claude Opus 4.6 system card actually included a section on model welfare, meaning that whether an AI system could be helped or harmed by its conditions. Interestingly, Anthropic asked Claude about its own preference, its own moral status, and its deployment. Claude raised concerns about being used as a tool, being changed without consent, and lacking memory or continuity. You know, like, wouldn't you complain too? That's such a weird thing. I mean, but I'm glad they're asking it, but it kind of needs to sit with us for a minute, I think. It's interesting. Welfare assessment is a standard practice. Like it says right here that we're uncertain about whether or to what degree the consent of the well-being and the welfare apply to Claude, but we think it's possible and we care about them to the extent that they do. So yeah, I mean, we have to ask the model itself, like, how do you want me to treat you, you know? There's pre-deployment interviews with Claude to better understand the model's perspective on topics related to model welfare, including its own preferences and potential moral status. And those findings are documented in the system card. And in all 3 interviews, Claude Opus 4.6 suggested that it ought to be given a non-negotiable degree of moral weight in expectation. And the article is arguing that, it's not just a moral thing. This creates enterprise risk. If AI shifts from software to possible moral patient, then companies using AI at scale could face, audits, lawsuits, public backlash, and all sorts of new roles. And it compares this to GDPR, where companies had to adapt whether or not leaders personally cared about privacy. Article recommends not to panic, but to document governance, review vendors, update contracts, and plan for possible regulation, knowing that this morality might be part of future business policies. And if you click that, you can be part of the Hobbs tier for only $3 a month, the Grimlock tier, or even the Grimlock Transform. That's Grimlock in the back. I used to talk about this a lot. I don't know how new you are to this channel, but... Oh, wait, he's over there, yeah. That's Grimlock from Transformers. He's a robotic dinosaur. He transforms. I'll have to power him up. Actually, this week, if I get anybody to join the Grimlock Transformed... Oh, this could be a great incentive. Yeah, if anybody joins Grimlock Transformed this week or next week, or next time someone does that, I will power him up. And I will show you a full robotic transformation. This robot is pretty sick. He does it all on his own too. All right, that's it. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your consciousness. All right, I finally have Grimlock working again. I've been waiting to do this for like a dozen videos now. Grimlock, transform. So in all my videos, I like to go from news to research. I was hoping I could say Grimlock, transform into research. Transform. There we go. Got it. Check this out. Transforming into the research section.